FIOS 1's Christy Duffy has been covering this trial for us from day one. She is in first position tonight, and she joins us live from New Brunswick with the very latest. Christy, good evening.
Good evening, Andrew. A somber feeling inside the courtroom on Friday. Defendant Darun Ravi finding out his fate just before noontime when the jury convicted him of all counts, including the hate crime charge.
We have reached a verdict on all charges.
Darun Ravi looking visibly nervous just moments before the jury read aloud their decision from a 4-page verdict sheet. Ravi is now convicted of using a webcam to spy on and intimidate his former roommate, Tyler Clementi, all because he was gay.
He was selected to be targeted of the offense because of sexual orientation, guilty or not guilty.
Guilty.
Tyler Clementi jumped from the George Washington Bridge days after finding out his roommate had encouraged others to watch his private sexual encounter with another man, tapping into the webcam video stream from computers outside the dorm room.
Invasion of privacy would cause TC to be intimidated because of sexual orientation, not guilty or guilty.
Guilty.
First Assistant Prosecutor Julia McClure was congratulated as she exited the courtroom. It is considered a slam dunk for the state in this landmark case of cyberbullying, the bulk of it supported by technological evidence. McClure at a press conference right after.
I think that our evidence was overwhelming on many of the counts here in this indictment. We're very pleased that they saw fit to return guilty verdicts on all the counts.
And as for Darun Ravi, he could be put away in state prison for 5 to 10 years. He is out on bail and will be sentenced come May. He is also facing deportation to India. Live outside the Middlesex County Courthouse in New Brunswick, I'm Christy Duffy. Andrew?
Christy, have we had any reaction from Darun Ravi or from his family or anything like that since this verdict has come down?
Well, Darun Ravi and his attorneys did pretty much flee the courthouse as soon as this was all over. They did not attend the press conference, which we saw the prosecution team and the Clementis at earlier today. However, I did watch their faces again closely in the courtroom, both when they were waiting for the verdict to come down and as soon as it did. And you saw it on the video right there, Darun Ravi's face when he heard one of the first guilty, coming down as guilty on one of the first bias intimidation charges. And you almost saw his look of shock and surprise, and I'm sure very unhappy to hear it because for him this means prison. Andrew?
And the Clementi family, they were there the entire time. We're going to get into their reaction in just a little bit, but clearly the ordeal for them, at least it seemed as though they were turning a page here in this process.
That's right, Andrew. And I would just say in the past couple of days, just seeing them out in the hallway as we waited for the jury to come down with their verdict, they were laughing, telling stories, talking about their interests. They just seemed extremely lighthearted in the past couple of days. And at first it struck me as somewhat odd. But, you know, you have to imagine that this is really a big relief for them. You know, this entire trial finally coming to an end. It's been over a year and a half. So a conclusion for the Clementis, Andrew.
All right, Christy Duffy reporting live from New Brunswick, New Jersey. Great work today and all throughout this trial. Christy, thank you so much. This case has got a lot of attention from across the country and across the world for any number of reasons. It's a combination of things. You have the modern technology of the internet streaming and the fact that a lot of the evidence came through via the internet. You have the bias crime and that thrown into it. This is one of the first tests of a bias crime charge in a case that didn't end, let's say, in a grisly murder. You also had some questions about the actual process of the trial itself and a lot of unanswered questions about the defense team and their approach to this trial. And for some legal context, we want to bring in Eric Morrell. He's a criminal defense attorney who's represented thousands of people across New Jersey, including a number of students at Rutgers today. Eric, thanks for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Sure, good evening.
First of all, what's your reaction to the verdict? Is this what you expected after watching this case go through? Were you surprised at all by the jury's decision?
I actually was surprised. I thought that Darun Ravi wasn't going to be found guilty of the bias intimidation statute. I thought it's a very difficult statute for the state to prove, and the way it is worded, it's difficult for the state to prove. And I was surprised. I thought he was going to be found guilty of some of the other charges, but the bias intimidation, I didn't think it was going to be found guilty.
There was speculation that Darren Ravi was going to take the stand in his own defense in this case. He didn't, and we got a rather quick guilty verdict across the board. Let me ask you, if he was your client, would you have put him on the stand?
I think it was a good tactical move by the law firm of Bennington Altman. Steve Altman did the right thing by not putting him on the stand, and it was a decision he made. And I think, of course, that decision was how he decided to go, and I would have made the same exact decision.
And I'll ask you about the plea deal that was offered. Obviously, Monday morning quarterback facing a guilty verdict now, you clearly would have taken the plea. But back at the time when he was offered the plea, would you have, if he had been your client, would you have taken it?
Well, there were other parameters that I'm not aware of in regards to the plea. It seems as if he was offered probation, but there could have been affecting his immigration status. It seemed as if, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but it seems as if his immigration status was of an issue. I know he was here legally, but he was probably pending status. But I think that the defense team did the right thing and tried the case, and it just didn't go as they expected.
Darren Ravi didn't take the stand, as we mentioned before, but the jury did hear from him in terms of the questioning, the video when he was being questioned by police. I'm wondering how much damage you think that may have done, that being the only voice of Darren Ravi that the jury got to hear.
I believe the defense at the end played the tape of Darren Ravi, and I think it was to show the demeanor of Darren Ravi at the time of his statement, his confession. And it seems to be that statement did cause the jurors to find him guilty of the bias intimidation. But I believe the defense made a good tactical decision by having him play that, because it showed he was calm and not aggressive, and you get a pleasant feel for him as a person. And as Steve said, he was just a kid. It's unfortunate. It's a tragedy that occurred, but it was just a kid, and it was crossing paths between one boy and another boy, and a tragedy occurred. But I don't think he should have been found guilty of bias intimidation, which is a very serious charge, second-degree offense.
All right, Eric, one last question. We've heard varying numbers about sentencing, what the potential sentencing is for Darren Ravi. How much leeway does a judge have in a case like this in determining what a sentence would be?
Well, in New Jersey, a second-degree offense is a 5 to 10-year sentence, and of course, Darren Ravi has no prior criminal history, so realistically, the judge could sentence him to 5 years, and hopefully that's how he is sentenced. I think that would be the range in regard to his sentencing, and the other lesser included offenses, he can get 0 to 18 months for the fourth-degree offenses and some of the third degrees. But of course, Steve Altman would argue that they be run concurrent, and he would probably, the most he would do would be 5 years.
All right, Eric Morrell, criminal defense attorney in New Jersey, thank you so much for joining us and for a little bit of your time tonight. Want to bring in our panel on this tonight. Tom Doherty is joining us. He's a former advisor to